You're listening to the Place Northwest COP26 podcast series,
a dedicated series that explores all things net zero carbon and sustainability within the built environment.
Don't miss any future episodes. Subscribe at placenorthwest.co.uk/subscribe or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Place Northwest COP26 podcast series. I'm your host, Julia Hatmaker. Today, we're talking about retrofitting, a hot topic as we get closer to the UN Climate Change Conference. As we discussed in an earlier episode, retrofitting will play a key part in helping the UK meet its net zero carbon goal. Today, we're finding out how one company is tackling the issue. Joining me is Colette McCune, Group Chief Executive of ForHousing, and also the net zero lead for the Greater Manchester Housing Providers Group. ForHousing is a progressive and innovative social landlord that owns and maintains more than 24,000 homes across the Northwest. With a focus on tenants and communities, ForHousing strives to improve lives every day, providing quality homes and places. Welcome to the podcast, Colette. How you doing?
I'm good, Julia. I'm good. Thanks for inviting me.
So happy to have you here. So why is ForHousing concerned with retrofitting?
I think we should all be concerned with climate change. It's hot topic at this moment in time everywhere. We're seeing the impacts of climate change internationally and nationally. As I'm talking to you, I'm sitting in Turkey because I'm actually on holiday at the moment, and Turkey has just faced some of the worst forest fires that they've ever had. We see forest fires in Australia, in California. We're seeing the icebergs melting quicker than was ever expected. And climate change is massive for us all, for every single human being on this planet. It's absolutely huge, and it should be something we should be focusing attention on. But actually, to bring it closer to home, I don't know if you're aware, but in 2015, Salford was hit by floods when the River Irwell broke its bank, and on Boxing Day, and over 2,000 homes were impacted by that and caused around £12 million worth of damage. So we're seeing the impacts of climate change. Some people mightn't realise it, and we absolutely have to do something about it as individuals, but also as organisations. So decarbonisation is high on the priority list of our board and the organisation. And we believe that the way to tackle decarbonisation within our organisation is predominantly through retrofit. So we've got some significant plans in place and work that we're doing currently to ensure that we absolutely have it as a priority within the organisation. Inside Housing did a piece of work last year, and it showed that social housing takes up a sixth of all homes in the UK, and to retrofit those homes to achieve net zero by 2050 will cost over £100 billion. And if we look at Greater Manchester alone, I lead, as you said, and the Greater Manchester Housing Providers Decarbonisation Group. And for those homes, 250,000 homes sit within Greater Manchester social housing homes, and the cost to those housing providers, to which there's around 24, will be in the region of £6 billion. But it's absolutely necessary. Some of those numbers are eye-watering, and it is a challenge for housing providers, but I also believe it's a great opportunity for us as well to improve tenants' lives, to improve their homes and therefore improve their lives and improve job opportunities for them. So it's a massive challenge, but a massive opportunity as well.
And it also strikes me too that when we retrofit these homes and make them more sustainable, we make them more energy efficient, which means we're actually saving the tenants money in the long term.
Yes, absolutely. And any work that we do in relation to retrofit, we have to consider people within this. This is not just about buildings or property. This is about people and making sure that energy is affordable for people. We're seeing what's going on in the gas price market at this moment in time. It's crazy the amount of money that people are potentially going to have to pay for energy. So when we are considering how we decarbonise homes, we also have to make sure that we are considering the health benefits to tenants in relation to tackling things like damp and mould, but also the affordability to tenants to make sure that we are not burdening them with increased fuel costs. And I do believe that the electricity and gas will start to level up, that you're starting to see that price rise in gas, and actually electricity will start to become more affordable, which means that actually maybe making some of the changes, some of the retrofit with things like air source heat pumps will actually become more manageable for tenants as well. But we have to take a phased approach to retrofitting. So first and foremost, we need to look at fabric first. We need to insulate, 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 and insulate some more, and then look at what technology we can install to support net zero. But again, more importantly, I believe to support tenants in their homes.
So obviously, we've made the case for retrofitting and why it's important. What is For Housing doing on this issue? I mean, you guys have been quite, aggressive in tackling it. You're not kind of waiting around for the government to tell you what to do on it. So what exactly are you guys doing?
Yeah, we've got fall for being proactive. I mean, after
Mhm.
Grenfell, we took the decision, the board took the decision. We were one of the first housing providers nationally to install sprinklers within our high rise, because again, it was about tenant focus. We had people living in properties who were fearful of what had happened at Grenfell, but we also had tenants who were fearful that they wouldn't be able to live in their homes in high rise. So we took the decision to be proactive, not to wait for any funding, and we installed sprinklers. We're taking the same approach around decarbonisation. We're looking at it very much again, involving tenants, involving people, because there's no point in people believing that this is done to them. We have to make sure that we involve tenants in every step of the way. We have made a commitment that by 2030, all our properties, all our homes will be at least Band C. So that means that we are going to invest in over 2,000 homes to make them Band C. We're also currently working on 70 homes. We've installed monitoring equipment to monitor how the building reacts in a heat season, so in a winter or in an autumn. And we're working with some manufacturers, property service organisations, and some other RPs, along with Southampton University. It's called the Net Zero Collective. And that's very much about gathering data, working with the tenant, looking at their fuel bills, gathering data around how the property performs, so that then we can almost do a plan for that home. We can look at it and we can say, actually, these are the interventions that we need to make. But along that journey, we will work with the tenant to ensure that they fully understand what it is that we're doing. And then once we make those interventions, and that may be, again, air source heat pump, it could be PVs, it could be a mixture of both, it would definitely be some insulation, but also then monitor that for the next 2 years so that we can really see that it's achieved what we thought it would achieve. Because there's no point in us saying that we're going to retrofit properties to achieve net zero and then walk away from it and have no evidence that it has actually achieved net zero. Otherwise, it just becomes a conversational piece. You need the data, you need the intelligence. And with that work that we're doing, we're going to scale that up. So those 70 homes are a proof of concept for us. And we will then look at the different archetypes and we will then be able to scale up those interventions.
There's a lot to unpack there. And one of the things I kind of want to start with, though, is just what you said about being proactive. And I understand, like, that's something people need to do, but it's quite hard to be like, we're just going to do it. Because as you mentioned earlier, it's expensive.
Yeah.
So can you kind of walk me through how you guys had those discussions to decide, like, we're going to actually start taking action now?
Yeah, well, we spoke to the board. We talked and had some quite long discussions with the board about what a priority this would be. So first and foremost, we had to say, actually, this is going to be a priority. We had to make that commitment in the organisation. And we then needed to let people know. So when I say let people know, let staff know, because it's staff who are delivering this, and let tenants know that this is a priority. But there's some trade-offs to that, because it may be that we won't be able to develop as many new homes. But we've actually got to look at our existing beneficiaries. Not existing beneficiaries are the existing tenants who live in their homes that we happen to be the landlord for. So the starting point was for it to be a main priority, but recognising that there were going to have to be some trade-offs. Now, we will still build new homes, but we may not build as many new homes. But what we want to do is truly understand the cost of this. And we believe that we can only do that by taking the proactive measures that we are. We can sit back and wait, but the longer we're waiting, and what are we waiting for? Funding, a new technology to come in and suddenly save us. No one's going to create a paint that we can paint on the outside of a property that's going to make it net zero. And at some point, we have to look at tried and tested technology, which is again insulation, and some new technologies, but recognise it's not all going to happen today. This is going to take time. But so we're taking a very measured, we're being proactive, but we're taking a very measured approach to it. And it's a very intelligence-led approach. We want to understand the cost to us. We then want to work collaboratively with other housing providers, like Greater Manchester housing providers, so that we can be very clear to the market, as in manufacturers, contractors, as to what our requirements are, because then you'll get some economies of scale. If you can attract manufacturers to the Greater Manchester area, if we can agree on standard specifications, then we could get some price benefit from that.
And I think I love that idea. This is proactive, but it's realistic.
Yeah,
It's
it's
not
got to
just
be.
like a pie in the sky idea. This is like going,
Yeah, it's got to be realistic. We're not going to go out and build, a passive house that actually people can't live in. And we're not going to be unrealistic and say, actually, we're going to put air source in everyone's home, because there are some properties that just won't lend itself to that. They won't lend it. The archetype does not lend itself to the sort of technology, but we have to provide solutions. And again, we've taken that proactive approach to work with tenants, to look at individual plans for individual properties, because no property is the same, as is no tenant the same. No property is lived in the same. So we have to take this approach that will then inform our investment plans for the future. Yeah, we've got to look at realistically as well, as this isn't just about how much it's going to cost, but also have we got does the market have the resources? Do we have the installers? Do we have the technology? Do we have the products? Do we have the skills to do this? So we have to, as individual organisations and as collectives of organisation, look at the size of this, look at the size of the spend, over what period of time that spend is going to take place, and attract the market and attract the skills to it. So it's a very considered approach.
and I feel like that carries through with the research you guys are doing with universities of kind of like finding out what actually works and using the time to kind of gather that data rather than leaping headfirst and just assuming everything you try will be the best solution ever.
Yeah, yeah. And what you don't want to do is be the first to run into a technology and put a technology in that doesn't work, or that can actually increase people's bills or do detriment to the property. So again, we're not just, we're not going to be the white knight that's going to come in and suddenly find the solution here. We're not going to take risks. But air source heat has been around a long time. PV has been around a long time. So we have to look at what interventions at what time works best for the tenant and for that particular home. And so having individual plans and investing in the way we are in these 70 homes at the moment and monitoring them will significantly help us to invest in the right way. And no regrets. Hopefully no regrets investment, because that's what we all want.
Fingers are crossed. So how long is the research project going to be going for? Is it just 2 years or?
2 years. Yeah. We've got monitoring in the properties at this moment in time, and we want at least one heat season. So we want to winter, we really want to understand. And then we want to work with tenants around how they're living in their home, what impact the interventions we will make could potentially have on their bills. And we want to work with them on that. And then we want to put a programme of works in and then make the interventions. And then, as I say, monitor it then for 2 years. So we're working on it now. By the time we go through the process of installing that, you're probably looking at it being the whole system is probably 3 years. We're not just going to walk away and go, okay, well, that property is net zero now. We are going to monitor it for 2 years. We want it to be really valuable intelligence.
Right, because it seems like it's about creating best practices more than just like one solution for one place.
Yeah, yeah. Individual home plans.
And I feel like too, it seems to me like this is something that other housing groups could learn from.
There are other housing organisations who are doing this. There are other housing organisations who are doing this with the Net Zero Collective. I don't know who they are. But also, you look at Greater Manchester Housing Provider, that's a great collaboration of housing associations. We're currently working together on 5 key areas. So those 24 housing associations are working together on our decarbonisation plan. And we're working in the areas of communication, tenant engagement, financing and funding, data, because data is always going to be absolutely important, and new initiatives, because each of those housing associations has some best practice. So let's all copy it. I'm a great believer in plagiarism. Let's plagiarize it. If it works well for you, it will work well for us. So let's not all reinvent the wheel, and let's not all try and be the first to get the medal or to get the award. This really is a time when people need to collaborate, organisations need to collaborate, and actually the country needs to collaborate on this. It is the biggest challenge that is facing the world at this moment in time.
And I feel like you were saying earlier, like everyone has to band together to kind of move the market in the direction it needs to go in. But one of those key aspects is coming up with some standards, which is something we don't have right now at all.
Yeah, coming up with a recognised standard would be good, a recognised definition of what we mean by net zero, but would be really, really helpful. Coming up with some long-term funding would help. I'm not saying that, I don't believe that, the government can come in here and solve all the problems and there's going to a bottomless pit of money, but it would be really useful that whatever was allocated to fund decarbonisation was allocated over a long period of time, because it then allows us to plan rather than bidding and competing against each other, which is the current framework we operate within.
And one of the things you've been talking about too is like you've continually brought this back to the tenants and the people who are living in the houses that you guys are helping run. So what is the best way to keep them in the loop and to keep them educated and informed about what's happening and what needs to happen? What have you guys found as a successful way of doing this?
Talk about it now. Don't talk to
Yeah.
tenants when you're about to put air source heat or insulate. Talk about it now. It needs to be part of organisations' daily narrative. We're investing in retrofit assessors. We're investing in retrofit champions. We're making it a key part of staff's role, and we're making it part of our language, engaging with tenants so it doesn't come as a surprise to them that the only time they hear from us is when, again, we're about to knock on the door because we're going to disrupt them. Because let's not lose sight of this will be disruptive work, and it's a tenant's home.
I was gonna say, like, I feel like a great aspect of this though is like you're getting them on board, but you're also like educating them and explaining to them like why this is a good thing. Like, yes, it's gonna be disruptive, but you are part of the solution to the climate crisis.
Absolutely. And engaging with the schools in the area, engaging with younger people in the area is part of our tenant engagement, because we need people to help us. We need the kids to help us with the parents. But more importantly, we need the buy-in of tenants. They need to understand the benefits that we'll have to them. But more importantly, we need to respect that this is their home, and they know that we respect this is their home.
So it seems to me like, if you're going to retrofit the ForHousing way, one of the key aspects is one, engage. Like, can't say that enough. Like, keep tenants informed, keep them in the loop, kind of let them know why this is important. The other is to just really prioritize it. And in prioritizing it, to say, we're actually going to do stuff. We're not just going to wait around. We're going to start being like proactive, but in a realistic way, and understanding that you can't have it all. So there has to be some trade offs. And it sounds like the next step of that is also making sure that you are developing a plan for the future, and that you're not just kind of, again, you're not waiting around, but you're accumulating data. You're using the tasks that you're doing now to really come up with the best way to do this in the future as well, and developing these best practices that people can learn from. And it sounds like a huge aspect of how you guys are handling retrofitting is being collaborative, not just with your tenants, but with the other housing associations and housing organizations out there, and kind of trying to make a community where everyone works together and can kind of influence the market to get to be doing what you guys need in terms of developing standards, and also like coming up with the products that can be used to help make these homes greener. Is that about right? Am I missing a key aspect of the ForHousing model?
No, I think you're right. Communicate, collaborate. And again, it's also about being realistic. But I think the collaboration is the biggest one of them all. Collaborate with tenants, communicate with tenants, collaborate with other organisations, because we're stronger together. And in our organisation, in ForHousing, and I know other housing associations in Greater Manchester, we do share data, we share initiatives, and we're happy to share data far and wide. This is not the time to have our badges and want to be, again, as I said earlier, the first there to win an award. This truly is bigger than that. It's bigger than any one individual and any one organisation.
So, kind of given all this and your work with the GMHP, what are you how do you feel about our ability to actually retrofit the way we need to meet our climate goals? Do you think we stand a chance? Are we way too far behind? What's the verdict?
No, I think we can do it. I think, again, if we do those things, if we respect the tenant's home, if we collaborate with each other and we're realistic, and we recognise there are going to have to be some trade-offs, then I absolutely believe we can do it. If we get the electricity grid and we're able to decarbonise the electricity grid, that will significantly help us as well. But this really is about a collaborative approach with manufacturers, with contractors, with RPs, with tenants. And I'm positive. I think there'll be jobs. Andy Burnham has set up a decarbonisation task force, which I sit on. And we believe there is as many opportunities as there are threats. And I believe it could be part of, creating thousands of jobs and skilled jobs. So I see opportunities. I'm never defeatist. I'm glass half full, realist, but I believe that we can do this. I believe we can achieve it.
I love some optimistic realism. And I love that line that you said of, there's as many opportunities as there are threats. And I think people kind of, it's easy to get stuck into the whole, we'll never get there, we're going to have an apocalypse by then kind of way of thinking, which just kind of makes it so you don't want to do anything. And it's, way better if we could be looking at it from an aspect of like, there's still a chance. There's things that we can do. If we band together, we can get it done. Oh, inspiring words. Thank you so much, Colette, for joining us on the podcast today. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate just kind of how motivating that was, to be honest with you. Like, I feel like I'm ready to go out there and be like, okay, let's do some insulation. Let's get this going. Let's move forward.
Get in there.
Yeah, exactly. My poor husband will be like, what is she doing to the walls? And I'll be like, I'm insulating. It's good.
Insulate. Very simply, when you're cold, what do? You put a jumper on. And if you get a little bit cold, you'll put a hat and you'll put gloves on. It's a very simple process, So, but no, I am absolutely passionate about this. And I hope that we all will be. And I hope this goes some way, this podcast goes some way to helping, even if it only helps one person. And my offer out to any of the listeners, if they want to learn more about it, please contact me.
All right, you heard it there. You have full right now to contact Colette. If you want to find more about Colette and ForHousing, you can check out forhousing.co.uk. I think that's going to actually wrap up our podcast. Thanks again, Colette, for joining.
Pleasure, Julia. Lovely to meet you.
As a reminder, this is just one episode of our COP26 podcast series. To make sure that you don't miss a single one, the best thing to do is to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. That includes Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor FM, whatever service you use. Give us a good subscribe and you'll be able to stay up to date on the latest in our COP26 podcast series. Also, if you enjoy the podcast, feel free to leave us a review. Not only does it help us know what is working on the show, what's not working, and all that jazz, it also helps other people find the podcast. So please leave a review if you can. Once again, thank you so much for listening. I'm Julia Hatmaker. Have a good rest of your day.